So before we start, I have this privilege of giving you a recap of the past sessions. So if you give me a few minutes, and of course, thank you, Jonathan, Rhea, for inviting me here. And I'm also very pleased to acknowledge the President and CEO of the PJLI Group of Companies, Sir John Henry Lewillier. A round of applause, please. Thank you so much, sir, for leading this initiative. So for those who just joined this afternoon, this Disaster Resilience Forum 2025 overall is all about raising awareness on the big wave we face, not just the big one, and how we can all work together across different sectors to build real resilience, the kind of leadership that we need to be in place that would inspire this action, and the role of the LGUs and local community champions, and how local solutions, when scaled, can make resilience more inclusive and forward-looking. So for session 1, we started with the vision, the hashtag Resilient Pilipinas and hashtag Lahat Handa at Ligtas. And then after that, in panel session 2, we talked about action or empowering local champions, focusing on scalable, sustainable resilience beyond preparedness. We also talked about using nature-based solutions and bridging policy and ground reality. So now, for our final session, we have a very ambitious goal. Our talk will center on collaboration and strengthening solidarity for impact. And it means that all the ideas and discussions discussed in the earlier sessions, we need to bring it down to practical, scalable local solutions that our audience here will, their key takeaway from attending this forum. So all that within 30 minutes. So good luck to us. All right, so I would like to start my question with Sir Butch, because in your last slide, you discussed about a roadmap. And in terms of partnership models in disaster risk reduction and management, what have been effective in the Philippines? What made them effective? And what are the necessary requirements so that we can replicate them and scale them up in other locations?
Well, what we've found is that agreements that you make before a disaster happens are the most effective. No? So if we have pre-agreements, both with LGUs, we're a member of the Makati Disaster Council, also Quezon City. But if we can have these pre-agreements before something happens, it's much more effective and much more efficient, because if you try to do this during a disaster, you can't exchange business cards in the middle of a typhoon. So pre-agreements, if we can do it when we're all here and it's quiet and it's nice outside, it's much easier, so that when something happens in the Philippines, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. When it happens, we know what everybody knows what they're going to do, who's going to provide fuel, who's going to provide generators, who's going to provide food. I mean, if we can do that, it's much more effective.
I would like to highlight on the pre-agreements, because from the European Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines, we implement a lot of grants. Is there somebody from GIZ here? Because GIZ has a very tedious process in terms of reference in implementing a grant, and I just finished off my last grant with them. And these pre-agreements are very important, and who are the actors who are supposed to implement them. So I'd like to segue to the next question, which is the collaboration between the private sector, the government, and the civil society to build these resilient communities. Is there a certain structure within the roadmap that is now being led by the PRC?
Yeah, we have different agreements with different groups, LGUs, some NGOs, and government agencies. And we have a template, but the key for us is that everybody has to contribute something. Di pwedeng grant lang or, and then you just accept it. So we need, for example, we gave emergency communications equipment to LGUs, but they have to commit to maintain it, and then to commit to be trained in how to use Starlink and all these devices. So everybody has to have some skin in the game. But yeah, we use MOUs like everybody else, but we try to involve the business sector, even the local companies, NGOs, and the LGUs.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to also ask Jasmine the same question in terms of your experience on ground, on what are these templates that you have used, that you were able to coordinate initiatives from the private government and civil society.
Thank you for that. Good afternoon po sa lahat. So for National Resilience Council, what we really should do is multi-stakeholder platforms. Now that is easier said than done, coming from the different political dynamics, social dynamics, and with that platform, we don't see each other just as stakeholders, but really as partners. There we exchange resources, expertise, and really come up with the co-creation of innovations. But more to that is how we see everything as a system. We share that all of these are interconnected, all of these relationships, all the plans from the national up to the local, even the conversations and relationships we have are part of the big system. And that part of the system, at the center of it, are the people. That's why we always say, walang plano pag walang tao. So in the center of it is, how do they appreciate it by themselves? I heard earlier from the previous panel, you have to own it first from the different sectors, co-create them, and then do a co-ownership with that. But that also entails a deeper and tedious process of stakeholder analysis and seeing everyone eye to eye in that platform.
Okay, before we go to the funding, Sir Cesar, I'd like to have more on the coordination part kasi doon medyo talaga we're all working in silos because I think one of the key takeaways that I got from the last two sessions is we all admitted that there is no unified resilience roadmap yet. I remember, well, I have not experienced any disaster here in the Philippines, but in California in 2020 there was a huge wildfire. And I remember that there was a live update on where this wildfire is growing. And then after that, we know exactly when do we need to evacuate. And then the evacuation orders are just centralized. And then suddenly there are these fighter jet, sprinkling this firefighter substance all over our houses. It's a very structured and you can trust it and you don't fear for your life. But how do we address it here? Do we have that in place? Maybe, Sir Butch, maybe you can start.
No, I think we're much better than we used to be, no? We learned a lot of lessons from Yolanda and from Ondoy. So there's a lot of complaints, but if you look at the Marikina River now, those structures were put in place and it doesn't flood as much. The weather is changing. So even small storms, which we didn't used to pay attention to, heavy downpours, flooded streets, and there's not even a typhoon, no? So things are changing. But the Philippines, we lost 6,000 to 10,000 dead in Typhoon Yolanda and Haiyan. Today, the casualty figures are much lower because the LGUs, the national government, they implemented these pre-evacuation drills and exercises. So they get people away from the danger zones. So the casualty rates are much lower. I mean, there's always going to be some people who are not going to leave or somebody who got drunk. But, everybody else follows the rules.
But I think, Jasmine, in terms of your insight on the communication platform, what do you think should be the improvements there?
First, coming up from the geological aspect of the Philippines, it's an archipelago. We have a lot of culture, even the dialects are different. This is where contextualization comes in. There's no one size fits all for everyone, and that's why the importance of multi-stakeholder platforms coming from different aspects, coming it really from the ground. The importance is ground truthing when it comes to communication. We have tried it before, like even when it comes to communication, Messenger or Viber. You cannot impose that in an area. It should be coming from them, how they want to be communicated, even how we talk about resilience, how we talk about risk. Do they understand it? We're coming from the national agencies, coming from here in Metro Manila, but once we go to the provinces, how do they understand it? It really comes back to being storytellers on the ground. How do we explain it into their own lingos? And only then that we could tell them, that they could make it personal to them and really have them on board when it comes to resilience building. So really the point here is to have this contextualized ground truthing approach.
And what should that platform be? Should it be digital or both, printed and digital?
I'm not sure if we are very welcoming already when it comes to digital platforms coming from the previous panels that are GIDA areas, but I think we're already improving with that part. From our end, we cannot impose from the NRC. We really have to take it from consultations and participation on the ground. So currently, we do, as shared earlier, hybrid versions. And I think that should not also stop us to having this innovation. That's why when it comes to resilience, when it comes to response, when it comes to preventive measures, innovation will always have a key factor on how we become a more resilient country.
Thanks, Janice. I think we can also learn more from the Makati case study on how they communicate and cascade to their citizens. For BSP, you discussed earlier regarding the inclusion on digital financial services. And so how do we leverage that to ensure social protection benefits and emergency aid reach our most vulnerable populations, especially during disaster?
Because of the advent of technology, we can greatly leverage on what's already available in the market. So there are very many resilience building facilities from the private sector that can already be used by our countrymen. And that's something that we can capitalize on. So, for example, the mention of ground-up approach, and we have this program, for example, the Paling QRPH program, and it's a program wherein digital payments is being promoted at the city and municipal level, and essentially revolves around providing select sectors with accounts, and through these accounts, the select sectors such as the vendors, the transport providers, senior citizens, or disabled groups from that municipality or city are well identified and are properly briefed and onboarded into accounts, and they should have these prior to the unfortunate
disaster. Yeah.
event or disaster, and by having them in place even when there's nothing happening yet, would already be a significant step, since aid can be readily downloaded.
But I think we had a side discussion. We just need to make sure the integrity of that list, right? Para tayong mga ghost beneficiaries. Okay. Still on the topic on funding when a disaster is already here. What specific roles should donors, volunteers, and business networks play in sustaining long-term community recovery efforts? Because we've seen this in Typhoon Yolanda, like there's like a surge of funding, and then once the momentum is gone, then we are not able to sustain the recovery efforts. So maybe we can start again, Sir Cesar. What's your insight on this?
Well, from a financial services perspective, it would be very beneficial for them to be aware, for the beneficiaries to be aware of how to maximize the facilities that they already have at hand. So not just with the receipt of the benefits or the aid, it would also be important that they know how to make the most of that aid, whether they use it for consumption, they use it for rebuilding livelihood.
Jasmine, would you like to give your insights on that?
Thank you. So for NRC, we have this Adopt a City program wherein we partner with private sector to co-develop solutions with a particular area that they would want to be. And that is really influencing resilience to be part of their business cycle. So when it comes to Adopt a City, we partner with them, not just an afterthought, but really up to the planning of their assessments. Together, we see eye to eye with the LGU, with the academic sector, with the NGOs, POs. We sit them together, do facilitation of partnership, how the data, risk data of the particular area will affect not only the LGU, because when it comes to data sharing, it is important that whatever is available to the LGU, NGOs, CSOs is also important for the private sector, because at the end of the day, they will always be a part of that locality when a disaster happens. And after that, we continue with them from prevention up to the preparedness, up to eventually hoping for this response. And all of that together are weaved with what we also introduce as the resilience tool, which is the scorecard, a localized scorecard with indicators. They're the ones really creating those indicators, because we acknowledge that resilience is a journey, and that journey should come together to have this, as mentioned from the previous panel, in monitoring evaluation tool. So that scorecard could be a platform for that, and that scorecard we could see eye to eye with the different partners and see actions from that. So coming from prepare, prevention, up to the response part with the private sector.
Thanks, Charles. I think the impact scorecard is very important. Sir Butch, your insights on managing your donors, volunteers, and business networks in sustaining relief efforts.
Well, the difference is, you're right, the donations peak after disaster, and then when the headlines are gone, the press is gone, it goes down. No? But I think the difference between other groups and our organization, we tend to stay after the headlines are gone. That's why whether it's Marawi or Tacloban or Catanduanes or in other areas, we're still there years after it happens. And we realize whether you're a donor, a volunteer, or a business, you have a role to play. Tolstoy once said that the greatest human achievement, love. And I think if we can just kind of care for our fellow Filipinos and for other people around the world before, during, and after disasters, and be nice to each other, whether it's in traffic or if somebody's crossing the street, don't run them down. But I think that's important, and it's that spirit that sama-sama tayo, we're all in this together, and that we should help each other. I think that's the most important thing that we can do.
Thank you so much, Sir Butch, Janice, and Cesar for this. And I think we have last 2 minutes. I would like to ask for your last message for everyone here to take to strengthen our collaboration and build a more resilient Philippines. Quick takeaway, Cesar.
So, as mentioned by my fellow panelists here, it's the solution or providing resilience and the building resilience will not be the province of just one agency or one sector, but would entail the participation of the public, private, and even the development partners. So with that, I would like to extend this call to our colleagues from the private sector. You're the wellspring of ideas. We've been seeing a lot of great ideas that would greatly make resilience more achievable to more Filipinos. And please continue coming up with these ideas.
Um, for me, probably the emphasis on the integration of both science and technology and leadership and governance. Now, when we talk about governance, we just don't talk about government, but really the system of the government. Because your data is only as good as how it is implemented. Now we have the science on what to do, where it must done. How it really gets done on the ground is your leadership and governance. So I emphasize also that in any platform that you know, in any science and technology data that you have on risk, you're able to share it and laymanize it to anyone so that you could able to take it action, not only because it's a duty or a mandate as a government, or it's a checklist for SGLG or for your organization accomplishment, but because resilience really is a part of the life that you have.
Thanks, Janice and Sir Butch.
And well, I'm just reminded of a school teacher in Tacloban who I met after Yolanda, and she had her 6-year-old child in her arms, and she lost the grip, no, on her child, and her child floated out to the ocean. And when I came to Tacloban after the destruction, I spoke to her, and what inspired me is that, she wasn't feeling sorry for herself. I was there trying to console her, but she was trying to console me. And she said, "Salamat ho, thank you for coming to Tacloban." And I'm continually inspired by the heroism of our fellow Filipinos who have suffered so much. I think that's what we should treasure.
Thank you, Sir Butch. Well said. Now we still have time for questions coming from our audience. We have microphones on the floor. Please go ahead. Do we have any questions? Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Magandang hapon po. Ako si Jose Aquino from EcoWeb and from the National Anti-Poverty Commission also. Yung tanong ko ay basically one on the private sector. Another is, the second one is about public sector. Yung sa private sector ay in terms of solidarity, anticipatory action. Alam natin yung kwento sa Yolanda, pagkatapos ng typhoon, wala na silang lupa. Or in other typhoons, nasisira yung mga gamit. May data science tayo. We know kailan darating ang bagyo. We can forecast, no? At nade-develop yung technology niya. Pero wala tayong insurance. How do the private sector or the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, maybe, sa financing, tinitingnan na mula dito sa possible forecast ng dadaanan ng bagyo, yung LGU can pay in advance at saka yung insurance i-release doon sa community na mahihirap lalo na dahil sila ang vulnerable 5 days before the typhoon, no? Para makabili sila ng kanilang sardinas, bigas, etc. So that's one. At bawal yata yung LGU sa may problema na mag-release, no, sa insurance. So that's one. Ikalawa, sa public sector, siguro ang tanong ay binabanggit na ang sentro lahat ay mga tao. Yung mga mahihirap lalo na pag tinamaan, talagang sila yung kawawa. Sa mga sentrong ito, kadalasan kaya nangyayari ito kasi may ilang tao nagpapasya. Katulad ng mga tinek-text kanina, di ba? Ilan lang nagpapasya sa magkano insertion, no? Etc. And sa totoo, sa local governance, yung LDRRMC, that's just paper and compliance. Wala namang talagang totoong participation ng basic sector o yung mga communities, lalo na yung vulnerable, poor communities. O meron man, sila yung malalapit sa mayor, sa barangay captains. Na. So tingin ko, yung binabanggit na governance, tsaka yung private sector, pwedeng magtulong yan. May gagawin separately, pero may gagawin. Ano pong nakikita ninyong possibility maisulong ito para totoong kasama ang tao sa pagpaplano ng kanilang vulnerabilities? No? Na mailaan niyo yung programa ng gobyerno hindi sa uncontrolled, flood control budget in billions, kundi dun sa programa for the basic needs, no, ng vulnerable sector. Pangalawa, yung insurance. Ano yung pwede natin gawin in terms of anticipatory action na makarating in advance at mabayaran at pwede magtulungan ng private sector?
Thank you, sir. Those are very good points. Cesar, would you like to answer?
So, I'll be speaking on what we are doing. Kasi, for example, yung predicting at mga forecasting capabilities, wala po sa sa poder po ng Bangko Sentral po yan. And it's in the province of, for example, DOST and DILG. But for our part, masugid po nating pinopromote ang magkaroon na rin ng insurance coverage ang mga tao by being financially included. Kaya po, parati namin pinupukpok na importante na may account po ang ating mga kababayan. And we use various methods to promote this. And through the accounts, we can have more people access services po tulad ng insurance prior to an untoward incident. Yun po yung ginagawa mula sa panig namin.
Thanks, Cesar. Sir Butch, would you like to add?
Yeah, I just want to add, may bagong batas yung which they just passed, yung anticipatory action, no, which allows yung government, our LGUs, to pre-position good and to disburse funds before the typhoon happens, no? So, I mean, that's the first of its kind in the world. So, pwede lang tumulong Dadating na yung tulong bago dumating yung bagyo. So, you'll be able to use it, whether to buy food or to evacuate. At least, that's the rationale between that law, no? So, sana matupad yun, ano? There's one difference between passing a law and actually nangyayari or executing it. But we're ahead of the rest of the world because meron na tayong batas for anticipatory action which we can pre-position goods, we can provide funds to communities before a typhoon happens. The other thing is yung mga microfinance companies, they do provide microinsurance to mga tao, no? And it's just a matter of hulugan yun, no? You have to pay for it. But so there are types of insurance. It's just that many people just don't believe in insurance. I mean, kasi parang sayang yung pera. So, but it's a culture that we have to change because insurance is very useful, especially if you're in a typhoon-prone area.
It's a behavioral mind shift po talaga, sir. It's a deeper problem. Jani's last one because I think we have we have another question from sir. Go ahead, sir. We can accommodate one last question.
Thank you very much. Not a question, actually observation. I am Ali, Director of Islamic Relief in the Philippines. We often do not hear about the financial resilience. I was delighted to hear from Bangko Sentral that perspective actually. Now what I want to share is that in the areas where we are working, we are organizing small self-help groups. These are the savings and credit groups organized in the barangay level over a period of time. Sometimes fishermen separately, women separately, farmers separately, and so on. We promote savings either in their individual accounts or in the group accounts. As a group, they have income generation activities or livelihood activities at the individual family level. Out of that savings at the family level and the group level, we keep a small amount of money for their emergencies. That is kept as a fund with the group, in the individual account as well as in the group account that could be used in the future during any calamities or disasters or any difficulties at the family level. So I'm taking that concept, what you said earlier about the financial health and financial resilience. I'm very delighted about that. Hopefully we will be able to expand to larger areas within the country. Now I'm talking about Surigao, I'm talking about Lanao del Sur, I'm talking about Maguindanao del Sur and Del Norte, where we have these self-help groups with a component of savings for their future disasters. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for sharing that. I've heard about that, and maybe we can talk about it more so we can learn from you. So I think that wraps up our last panel, and thank you so much to all our distinguished panel members.